Hello, and welcome to the Godless Bitches show. I'm your host, Beth Presswood, here with Tracie Harris.
Hello.
And Jen Peeples.
Hi, everybody.
So we are back from our hiatus. I am all moved into my new house.
Woohoo!
Yeah, that was really fun. And so everybody's on Skype tonight because I moved so far away. Tracie's not my neighbor anymore.
Oh, it hurts.
Yeah. Oh, well. But, we have technology now, so we can do this. So we were off on perhaps the biggest month for feminist issues. It's kind of a bad thing because we didn't get to cover these things as they happened. But maybe also a good thing because I think a lot of our shows would have just ended up with screaming obscenities. That's pretty much how mad I was.
Yeah, I think I've screamed obscenities at the TV and the computer and to myself on a number of occasions in the last month.
Yeah, so the biggest thing is the Contraception Mandate. Basically, the Affordable Care Act mandates that preventive care be covered, and it was determined that contraception, which prevents pregnancy, is preventive care. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Yeah, what a concept.
Yes, so the Catholics got all riled up about it. And because there was a rule that churches didn't have to cover contraception, but churches was defined as, well, churches that serve people of their own faith. And Catholic hospitals and Catholic universities weren't going to qualify. So they were all riled up about it. And then Obama came out with a compromise, which I was really mad. Like the night before, I was like, he is going to give up. He is going to put women's health on the chopping block, da-da-da-da. And awesome. Basically, the healthcare companies, the health insurance companies, will have to pay for the contraception insurance, but it will still be provided to those women who work for Catholic hospitals and colleges and things. But even that isn't enough because it's not really about who pays.
Oh, of course not.
It's about punishing women. We all know that. This is a huge... I told you so. I've been watching this stuff for 10 years or more about how they're fighting contraception, how it wasn't just abortion, how it's really the sexual revolution and women's sexuality in general. And now I just get to sit back and say, I told you so, I told you so, I told you so. So, yes. And so in connection with all that, we have Rush Limbaugh.
Oh, yes. Mr. Getting busted coming back from the Dominican Republic with a suitcase full of Viagra.
Yes.
The Dominican Republic, where there is a thriving sex trade where underage kids get marketed for sex.
Not that we're necessarily implying anything. Just like he didn't necessarily imply that, pretty much every woman in America is a slut and a prostitute if she wants her contraception covered.
Yeah. Yeah, but a conservative radio host coming back from the Dominican Republic with a suitcase full of Viagra, the Dominican Republic where people go for sex tourism, where underage kids are sold, No, he's not a slut or anything.
No, not at all. Not at all. He's been married like 4 times, hasn't he? 3 or 4?
Something like that.
Yeah. He's not a slut though. Not a whore. None of that. Men can't be that, don't you know?
Oh, I know. Yeah, he's entitled to his sexuality and his privacy, but a 30-year-old law school student is not, apparently.
Right, and for anybody that doesn't know what we're talking about, there is a woman, Sandra Fluke, who goes to Georgetown University, who is testifying before Congress actually just on the medical benefits of contraception because she had a friend who lost an ovary due to cysts that she could have controlled with prescription birth control, but the insurance at Georgetown would not pay for birth control. Now, they were supposed to have a medical exception, but in practice, it was so difficult to get that she basically could not get it and had to go without the birth control and lost an ovary. So she's basically, if not completely infertile, at least reduced fertility, which you'd think the Catholic Church wouldn't, they wouldn't be for that. They like fertility.
Well, they like fertility on their terms. I mean, I've heard of lots of stories about Catholic couples who were unable to conceive naturally, who turned to assisted reproductive technologies. Depending on what Catholic church they attended, they had to keep that quiet because they would be condemned for using assisted reproductive technologies.
Yeah, IVF is banned.
Yes, because
Catholic
some
Church.
embryos won't survive.
Right, even though some embryos don't survive any, trying.
Yeah, it's like, okay, yeah, never mind how many embryos died while they were trying to conceive naturally because, for whatever reason, it didn't work out. But
Yes.
I guess one of the things that I'm wondering is, like, it's sort of a tangential thing, I guess, but just from sort of a logistical perspective, when I think of religious freedom, I think of the individual's right to religious freedom, to like free worship and free exercise. You know what I mean? It seems like that's supposed to be an individual right.
yeah, it's not supposed to be this organization that has a right to perpetrate whatever its views are on everybody else.
But even on their own individual adherence.
Exactly.
I mean, it seems like they can have their rules. Like the Catholic Church can have a rule that says you're not allowed to use birth control. And they can prescribe some sort of internal penalty, I guess, for that. Like, we're going to excommunicate people if we find out they're using birth control. I mean, if they want to do that, that's fine. That's their doctrines,
and
whatever.
I would applaud that decision, actually.
Well, but then what happens though is instead of simply saying we prescribe as an organization, as a religious organization, that this is our particular doctrine and this is the particular penalty for not adhering to that doctrine if you join our church, and agree to abide by our doctrines. And I don't have really a problem with that, because when a person signs on and they know this is the doctrine and they say, I will abide by that, and if I don't, I know that you excommunicate people for not adhering to it, then it's sort of like joining any association where there's rules. Like, for example, I'm part of a professional association and there's certain rules to it. And if I break those rules, there's penalties. That's part of being a professional in that industry and being aligned with the association of those professionals. I go in there knowing the deal, and they know the deal when I join, and everybody has it all, written out, and we know the rules. But still what happens, I guess, is it's still up to me if I'm going to abide by those rules.
Right.
I mean, they can prescribe the penalty, but they can't tell me that they're going to force me to adhere to the rules. They can only say, if you don't adhere to the rules, we're going to kick you out, we're going to sanction you, we're going to fine you, or, whatever. They can't say that we're going to use the law to make you adhere to the rules of our basically our policies as a professionally certifying organization. And even with a church, it's a little even less than that, because you're not really certifying anybody. It's just simply your doctrines. And they can run the church how they want to run the church, but they really, all they can do is tell people this is what we think is right and not right according to our religion. And if you don't do it, well, we're going to consider you not a Catholic. That really should be the extent of their authority.
Right. But, there's two reasons actually that the Catholic Church in particular won't do that. And one of them is that if they actually implemented a policy like that if you use birth control, we're going to excommunicate you, they would lose a lot of Catholics.
Well, but I mean, I guess
98%.
I'm not even saying that they necessarily need to excommunicate. They could sanction in some way, or
Right.
publicly humiliate people, or whatever it is they want to do within their organization.
And even if they did, I mean, I think that they would end up losing a lot of adherents because people just, they would see it for what it is, and they'd say, you know what, I'm out of here. And then the second thing is that I think they realized that Christianity itself didn't actually gain much of a foothold until it became the state religion. And so they need to basically exert some influence, whatever they can, on the government, because that's really, where their power lies, is whatever they can do to influence public policy.
It's just so foreign to me that doctrines like this should be thrust on non-adherents. And this is interesting to me, having a fundamentalist upbringing, because we, at our church, the idea was you tell people about, quote, the truth, and they accept it or they reject it. And that's their right. And if they reject it, then you move along. And it's funny because there's like Jesus parables about this very thing, saying that you simply throw the seed down, and if it doesn't take root, it doesn't take root. You just move on down the line. There is nothing. There was nothing about. I don't recall anything about any of our doctrines or anything biblically that sanctioned the idea of, if somebody says they're not going to live according to, the Christian doctrine, that you should somehow try to find a way to force them. There's nothing like that. I just don't know biblically how they even support this.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the Catholics don't biblically have to support it because they see the Bible as one authority among many. So they have a lot of other inputs than like a fundamentalist church, which would pretty much be prescribing strictly to a biblical interpretation. So they've got, the papacy and all of that feeds into it as well. So, I mean, they've got other inputs, but it's just so odd to me that, that somebody would think you can't reject you can reject the religion, but you can't reject living by our religious codes. Like, we're going to make you live like a Catholic, whether you are or not. That to me is bizarre.
Yeah.
Well, the Catholic Church is no stranger to theocracy.
No, they're not.
So, the Catholics are still up in arms about this. Rush Limbaugh basically called Sandra Fluke a slut and a whore because she wants her birth control paid for. It's just been crazy. And then
go ahead.
Then he apologized. Basically, he apologized for using the word slut and whore, or slut and prostitute. I actually think he used prostitute.
Yeah, he is prostitute.
Mm-hmm.
But not for, degrading her. Not for. He didn't really apologize.
Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say, I know that he issued several other apologies, or some other ones after the first one, but I remember on the first one he said something about, I guess people didn't get the humor, or something about the humor of it. And I was like, I saw him deliver it, like that was videoed, and there was no humor. He wasn't laughing. It wasn't like a chuckle. It was a rant. It wasn't a joke.
Yeah, that was not humorous. That was intended it was slut shaming.
He wasn't to fall back on that and say, oh, I guess my humor wasn't well received and maybe I made a bad joke. It's like, you weren't being funny. You weren't even, you could see that there was no attempt at humor there. That's crap. This wasn't a failed attempt at humor.
Well, and then it was that, I chose the wrong word, or something to that effect. It's like, no, you didn't choose the right word. The word you chose was exactly correct for the intent behind it.
Sure.
You got the wording right. It was what was behind it that was the wrong thing.
Yeah, and you don't feel sorry for it, I'm sure. You're just sorry that you like that you're losing sponsorship. I mean, I don't doubt that at all. This isn't somebody who has a history of being very sensitive and suddenly just said something wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Rush Limbaugh.
Yeah.
But apparently Bill Maher thinks we should just shut up and accept the apology.
Yeah, I think Bill Maher should shut up. He's wrong about the vaccine stuff, and he's wrong about this. I mean, he was wrong when, how long was it that he didn't call himself an atheist because, he didn't understand the definition of a word. And frankly, let's just say I'm not too impressed with Bill Maher and his views on women anyway.
Yes. Yeah, he doesn't have a good history of that. I think he went off on some rant against public breastfeeding once and a few other things. Anti-vaxxer, didn't call himself an atheist until around the time he got an atheist award for Religulous.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Fuck Bill Maher. But I think his main thing with what he said was says that you shouldn't go after someone's sponsorships, probably because he knows that he says a lot of things that are offensive to certain people.
Yeah.
But no, nothing he has said like that. To my knowledge, he's never said anything as bad as what Rush said.
I think he actually did get a show canceled a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was that HBO show that he had. And I could be wrong about that, but because of some stuff he said. But the thing is, when you put something out there in the public, for public consumption, and if people don't like it, your sponsorships are fair game. People can say, "Hey, I don't like this," and if you're supporting this, I'm not going to buy your product.
Yeah, you can't make me shop somewhere. It's like if I don't want to shop there, if I don't like what they're doing, I don't have to. It's like there are organizations or companies, I suppose, just companies that have all kinds of weird religious stuff about them, and I might feel uncomfortable shopping in them. And there might be other things. There's other sorts of, I guess, public interest issues that can prevent me from going in and shopping at a particular store. So what? That's my choice. I'm a consumer.
Yeah.
If I don't like what they support, I don't have to shop there.
Yeah.
It's not a problem. I'm not killing somebody. I'm not burning books. I'm not, it's like, whatever.
Well, and that's the thing. It's
anybody else can shop there.
Nobody's saying that, anybody should go out and harm Rush Limbaugh physically or anything like that. We're just saying, hey, if you don't want to buy these products because these guys are supporting, speech like this, let it be known.
Well, and I think, and from a real perspective, though, I mean, this would not be the first time that sponsors were concerned about the public image of the program or person they're endorsing. I mean, let's face it.
Yeah.
Look at what happened over and I don't care about it. It's not like I'm just using it as an example, but like Tiger Woods, it's really, as far as golf products and sports products and endorsements, it should only matter how well he's playing. If he's on top of the game, he should, have endorsements. But when his personal life got all over the headlines, suddenly there was all this question about endorsement. Now, I don't care, but I guess, but these people that are supporting him are just like, what is our name attached to here? What's going on with this? And the more women that were coming out of the woodwork, they were just like, I don't know if we should be, if this should be our spokesperson. Now, regardless of my personal opinion about, why or why not a sponsor would want a particular sports figure and what would be important or not important in that, clearly these sponsors proactively were thinking, what does this do to our image? And I don't know that I don't remember any kind of coordinated effort from anybody saying, let's boycott people who use Tiger Woods in their commercials. I don't recall that.
Anything. I don't remember anything like that.
But the sponsors themselves were freaking out because they were just like, what does this look like? And so when you have somebody that just gets up there and spews bigoted hatred, like, most of the time, and then just gets up there and offends, all of womanhood, I I think it's fair for any sponsor to say, gee, what are we backing here? I don't think that that's necessarily public pressure. I mean, not to say that there isn't. I mean, surely there probably are some groups that are saying, oh, boycott the sponsor. I wouldn't doubt it. But I would say that, the sponsors themselves to a certain degree are probably going to say, oh, man, what came out of his mouth?
Yeah. Well, not only that, but I mean, if you think about it, I mean, Rush Limbaugh didn't, when he said those things about Sandra Fluke, he didn't say that about just one woman. He was attacking just about every woman of reproductive age.
Absolutely.
In this country.
When you use words like that, those are sexist words. I mean, that when you use the word slut, you're using like a word to malign a gender. And it doesn't matter that you're aiming it at a particular woman. You're choosing a word that is like a negative word aimed solely at women. And it's just like using a racial slur. You may only use it at the one guy that you got mad at that happens to be of that particular race. But the fact is, when you use that word, it maligns the whole race.
Yeah.
Oh, and not only that, not only was he calling people sluts and prostitutes, but saying that if he was going to pay for their birth control, then they should
post
video their sex and post videos of it so that he could watch and jack off to it. Although he didn't say that last part, but we all know.
Yeah.
So it's a weird sort of thing because on the one hand, these women shouldn't have sex. But if they do have sex, something should be in it for him because he wants to have sex with or watch these dirty, dirty sluts have sex, but they shouldn't be having sex.
I guess it's just weird to me because we have, I actually have had this conversation with somebody, like I know someone who had cancer, that it was a preventable form of cancer. And their lifestyle was pretty much inviting it, let's just say. It was a lifestyle choice that is known to result in a particular type of cancer, which resulted. It was no surprise. And I have heard this person say things, complain about people making choices that end up costing everybody an insurance. And I always am like, well, what about the cancer you had to deal with?
Yeah.
And how many times did you go visit the tanning booth? I mean, let's get real here. It's like if you're there's probably not one of us that if we had somebody come in and scrutinize our lifestyle, wouldn't have something that we do or don't do that we could improve our health by doing or not doing. And so the idea that, someone's saying, this is something I do with my life, especially something as normal as having sex, and saying, I would like to have there's a medication available that allows me to avoid a condition that is like highly risky, that is expensive, that is, detrimental to my health. And this includes, all kinds of things that could occur. I mean, pregnancy is a dangerous situation. It's not a simple thing.
Right.
And so you've got this, and it's also not something that you want to just ignore and let the chips fall where they may. I mean, you want to be able to control this, just like when you get in your car, you want to put on your seatbelt, and you don't just say, I'm going to just go drive around and hope that if I get an accident, I'm okay, but I'm not going to put my seatbelt on. It's, to me, the idea that we would have this concept of this is a lifestyle choice, and so we're not going to pay to cover preventative care or any kind of care to help you out with what happens after the fact. I personally have no problem with things like, for example, gastric bypass. I think that if someone has a problem, has an eating disorder, or they have some issue where they're gaining weight and it's a problem for them and it's causing health problems for them, and gastric bypass will help that person, it's a highly risky procedure, and I understand that, and it's their choice whether or not to get it. But I'm not going to stand there and say, oh, well, you just need to diet and exercise. That's your problem, and I'm not paying for this. Have a heart, number one. But number two, it's like, come on. This is a procedure that they can have that's going to really help them out. And it's going to help us out because they've got these ongoing issues that are the result of this additional weight that they're having trouble controlling. And I don't care if they're having trouble because they have like an eating disorder or if they're having trouble because they have some physical problem. It doesn't matter to me. All that matters is this person wants to lose some weight. Their doctor has told them it would be beneficial to their health, and we have a procedure that can help them. And so why don't we go ahead, allow that to be done, and this person can get some help? And it should apply down the line to anything. I don't look at the person who had cancer and say, well, shit, you should have thought of that before you got in the tanning bed. No, you don't get chemo. You don't get therapy. You don't get, treatment. You threw yourself in that tanning bed. Well, come on. I mean, any one of us. Who doesn't, do some people have 3 drinks a week? Do you know what that does to your risk of breast cancer? Seriously. And I mean, but if you get breast cancer, I'm not going to say, forget it. You had 3 drinks a week. You were an average drinker. So no, you don't get treatment. What the hell? I really would like to examine everybody else's lifestyles and see what they're doing. And it's like, this is a responsible thing that can help a person avoid an expensive and risky health situation. And why the hell wouldn't you want that to occur? Because the results and the risks to everybody, if this isn't made available, are just ridiculous.
And it saves money.
And lives.
It does. And I mean, several people over the past few weeks have made the point that, birth control is not cost free. But if you look at it in terms of the cost of an abortion or the cost of an unintended pregnancy, it's really cost effective.
Yeah.
And so, it's really good medicine and it's good public policy.
Yeah. I mean, I read a
absolutely.
study, for every $1 spent on contraception, you save about $4 in direct cost. And probably more when you consider, all the kids who are born from not having birth control and, delinquency and things that can happen from there. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy.
Just from a social policy perspective, in my mind, if somebody comes to you and says, we have a drug or we have a treatment that can stop unintended pregnancies, almost 100%. In my mind, the first thing that comes to my brain is get this to everybody as soon as possible.
Well, and not only that, but I mean, we have a climate right now with, the barriers that a lot of state legislatures have put in place for a safe legal abortion that is in effect mandating pregnancy. If you get pregnant, the state is just about mandating that you carry that pregnancy to term. You no longer have very many options left.
I have to agree.
And if that's the case, then hell yeah, you need to be paying for birth control. You need to be paying for everybody's birth control.
At a certain point,
can avoid that.
And at a certain point, if the state doesn't want to take responsibility for stopping what would be a mess, basically, I mean, you have to allow people to have reproductive, responsible control. Otherwise, I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, clearly, you can't just have all these kids. And if you do, to me, we've been through like some issues with parental obligation. And I told you, Jen, that you gave me some things to think about recently. And one of the things is the harder the state makes it to avoid parenthood, the more investment the state has to own up to in the children that are produced. The more it makes it difficult to avoid a pregnancy or to terminate a pregnancy, the more obligation the state needs to be willing to take on as opposed to that individual. If you're going to tell somebody they can't use birth control, they can't abort, they basically have to have a child if they conceive, and you will not allow them to take steps to avoid conception. Literally, you're telling them that they have to avoid a very human, normal, natural, strong drive for sexuality, or they need to just have as many kids as they conceive. The state, as far as I'm concerned, is taking on that obligation.
Yeah,
you can't
I agree.
say that it's that you're moving in and you're removing more and more of the individual's choice, and you therefore cannot hold them. You can only hold a person responsible for choices they can make. And the less they are able to make those choices, the less I can justify obligating them with the outcomes.
Yeah, and at the same time, you've got some actually really draconian laws that have been enacted, the so-called welfare reform laws. That that was part of that was, oh, these sluts are getting rich having all of these kids. They get a pay raise every time they have a new kid. Let's screw them, or let's put the screws to them and make them work. And so what you have now is this situation where they are under great pressure to name the father of the child, even if they know that the guy doesn't want to be involved, and it would be better for the child if he wasn't involved. Basically, if they need public assistance for any reason, those benefits are being held ransom essentially until they get a name. They want a guy's name so they can stick him with the bill.
Yeah, and that's part of it too. I mean, I want to make this clear that, we talk about it from a war on women perspective, but honestly, when it comes to sex, this is a war on everybody.
It really is.
They will take the screws to you as a male as soon as they, like you're saying, as soon as they have your name and they're able to do so.
Well, and here's another little thing that needs to be ironed out in this this bill that requires coverage for contraception, because a couple of the things that are covered under there include things like IUDs and also sterilization. But these are, right now, they're being interpreted as sterilization for women only. And I think that coverage needs to be extended to men. If a man wants to have a vasectomy, he should be able to get a vasectomy with no copay and no deductible.
Absolutely, everybody should have reproductive control as much as possible.
Oh, yeah.
You cannot hold people responsible for things that you make it difficult for them to actually logistically control.
So I guess if there are any men out there listening, and I know we have a lot of men who listen to the podcast, you need to be raising holy hell about this. This is your issue too. If vasectomies are not covered under this, you need to be writing letters. You need to be raising holy hell about this.
Yeah, I had originally thought vasectomies were going to be covered because it says all FDA-approved contraception and sterilization options. The thing is, in the text of that bill, it's under the heading of preventive care for women.
Yeah.
And not under the heading of preventive care for men and everybody.
Oh, okay.
So
I think I see their logic.
Well, I don't think it's a conspiracy or anything. I just think it's something that got overlooked.
No, I think what they're saying is that this is I think, Jen, what we're talking about though is more of a legal issue. It's not by conceiving a child, the man is not preventing a medical issue for himself.
Yeah.
And so it would what Beth just read and what she's describing is a medical concern that says we allow you to sterilize to avoid this medical situation for yourself, which would be a pregnancy. Whereas a man getting sterilization, there would be more of a legal benefit in that he would avoid, creating and producing a child and then being legally held to account for that child. But his future medical status wouldn't change as a result of the conception, whereas a woman's would. So I think that's what they're talking about here. And that would, to me, be the logic in saying this will be covered insurance-wise for women. When it comes to a reproductive choice from like a state standpoint, from a legal standpoint, I see the logic of providing such a service to men. If we're talking about preventative medical care, I see why men would be excluded because it's two different conversations.
Yeah, I can understand that. However, I could also see where it would be a legitimate medical procedure if, for example, he knew he had some kind of genetic problem.
Yeah, sure.
And he didn't want to take the risk of passing that on to a child.
Yeah, I'm not saying no argument can be made, but I do see a difference between what Beth just read versus what we were just discussing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's something that the bill needs to be amended to include any kind of reproductive health care for men or women.
I wouldn't mind that.
And I think, sterilization for men certainly falls under reproductive health care.
I would agree.
Yeah, and I wish there was something besides sterilization too.
Oh, I do too. I wish they had some kind of reversible birth control.
Yeah, guys really need that. They're working on it, but you hear that every year that it's going to be here in 5 years.
Well, and it's kind of a demand thing. And I think that, part of the reason women have birth control pills right now is because the economic impact of having child after child after child was so huge for women that basically women said, we have to have this. And frankly, the medical profession's always been more willing to experiment with women than with men, especially when it came to issues around sexuality. And, early versions of the pill had a lot higher doses of hormones, and actually, more problems were associated with those. And I think, medical profession in particular has been very reluctant to do any kind of tampering with male sexuality. But I think we know a lot more about that now than we did before. And I think it's really time, that we kind of got over the squeamishness about possibly screwing up a guy's sexuality, and let's press on and get some male birth control out there.
Yeah, I've heard a story, anecdotally, I don't know the veracity of this, but that they were testing a male birth control, and one man's testicles shrank a little bit, and they stopped testing. Whereas when they were testing the female birth control, a woman died, and they just, tinkered with the dose. Now that's probably mostly bullshit, but there are women who've died of blood clots from birth control, and they have reduced the amount of hormones. But there is a distinct, they think men have a lower tolerance for sexual side effects than women do. That's been the whole argument against putting much money into the male birth control pill. Because the female birth control pill, tons of side effects. I mean, I had to go off of it because of side effects. Now, I had a great 10 years with it, and lots of women can tolerate it their entire reproductive lives. But, yes, apparently men, they feel that men are not willing to put up with very much, if anything, because they're not the ones that have to worry about getting pregnant.
Which is kind of like that medical clause you just read. I mean, that's basically what it's saying as well. You're the one that gets pregnant, so it's preventative care for you.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, so that whole contraception debate is still ongoing, but was going on last month. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've got something. Michelle Bachmann just weighed in this week on this contraception mandate. So, according to her, requiring religiously affiliated employers' health plans to cover birth control could one day lead to the government limiting how many babies are born per family.
Really?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Which, it could actually limit how many babies are born per family, but it would probably be because the parents were using birth control,
Yeah.
Not because the government required it.
It's self-limiting.
Yeah.
That's just the thing. They have to go all the way over. They think that nobody
people will be having sex with rats if this passes.
Yes.
I mean, it's just like they just go to crazy world.
They think that nobody would ever have kids unless they're forced into it. Basically, that, if you have birth control, then you're just going to never, ever have babies ever again. Like Rush Limbaugh in his tirades.
And what a crime that somebody who doesn't want kids wouldn't have them.
Oh yeah.
I know.
Well, child-free people don't exist to these people. But Limbaugh, in some of his tirades, there was a group called Birth Control Moms, or Moms for Birth Control or something. And he was like, well, if they use birth control, how'd they even become moms? Stupid Stupid. Stupid.
Well, and we can't not talk about Rush Limbaugh's little faux pas when he said that Sandra Fluke was having so much sex she couldn't afford all those birth control pills.
Oh, yes.
And it's like, dude, it's not like a condom where you use a new one every time you have sex,
Yeah, would that you could just take the pill right before you have sex and be covered.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. I mean, if they would come up with a pill like that, it would be awesome.
But no, these people, they don't know biology. The amount that people don't know about female biology and how birth control actually works is astounding. I mean, you take the birth control pill once a day, every day, no matter how much you're having sex or if you're not having sex.
I mean, no, they think that you take it, after you have sex so you can abort the baby.
Yes.
And I just want to point out again that this is, again, religiously affiliated employers.
Right.
This isn't a church. And that's the thing I think that blows my mind is the idea that this is a church that has decided to open up a company or open up some sort of a, business or a charity that is not their church. This does in no way has anything to do with their freedom of worship, their freedom of belief. It does not infringe on anything about what they do at their church, with their church, in their church. This does not infringe on their church at all, in any way. It is not an infringement on worship or belief. It is about, if you're going to do something that's not your church, if your church is going to throw its resources into something that is not church, then it has to abide by the laws of what regulates non-church charities, non-church, employers. It's not your church. It's not your worship service. It's a hospital. You decided to go into a hospital, and you have employees who are not Catholics, and they don't have to adhere to this. And we have rules that govern running businesses and running charities. If you want to be running within the laws, you have an option there. Nobody's making you branch out into secular concerns. It's up to you whether or not you want to do that as a religious, affiliated group. That's what I don't get. It's like, this is not about somebody coming into their church and saying you can or can't do this. This is about a church reaching into the secular sector and saying we don't want to be held to secular standards. It's like, well, but you're doing something secular. This is an adoption agency. This is not your church. This is a hospital. This is not your church. It's not your church, and it's not governed by your church. It's a secular concern that you have branched into, and nobody forced you to do that.
Yeah, and they can take their ball and go home if they want to, and that's what they're threatening to do. They're threatening with the adoption thing. They've pulled out and let all these kids, go without parents rather than give them to gay people. And now they say they're going to close down all the Catholic hospitals. Good. Sell them to secular institutions that'll give out real health care.
Yeah, it's not like healthcare industry isn't profitable and that somebody wouldn't be interested in it.
Well, and, I can think of a number of healthcare related nonprofit organizations that operate in the U.S. and internationally, and I would much rather see these groups running hospitals in this country than churches who are going to pull stunts like this, where they want to have people who are not affiliated with their church, not members of their church. They want to force them to follow the rules, of Catholics, which most Catholics don't even follow.
Yeah, 98% of Catholics use contraception.
Yeah.
It's so bizarre.
Yeah.
I don't even know. I mean, that's a whole other thing, but yeah.
I know. You could sit there and yeah, it blows my mind. It's like, what? Oh, wait.
Is there like a point where you just, look at, I mean, what is the tipping point where you say, I don't adhere to so much of what you're saying that I'm just not even a Catholic anymore?
Well,
I don't know.
FFRF, Freedom from Religion Foundation, is putting out a big ad in, I think, the New York Times pretty soon. An open letter to Catholics saying, y'all don't believe this shit? Come out of there.
Yeah.
It's just weird. I mean, I can see, it's like there's like these certain points of deviation, but then it's just like, wow, I mean, the church takes a hard line on particular things. And I can't, it's like, wow, so you don't agree with this, you don't agree with this, you don't agree with this. And yet at the end of the day, you're calling yourself a Catholic. Like, what exactly would it take? Like, how much deviation would it take for you to say you're not Catholic anymore?
Yeah.
Apparently a whole lot.
Do they just have to, they have to bring the hammer down and excommunicate you, or else you're just a Catholic even though you don't agree with any of it? I mean, I don't know. I'm sorry. That's way off topic. It's a feminist podcast, so I won't derail it anymore. But that's just nuts.
Atheists. That's fine. I think they should start excommunicating them. Just excommunicate the hell out of them.
Just ask yourself as an adherent, if I don't adhere to the doctrines, on what level am I an adherent? I mean, that's what the word means. When a person is affiliated with a church, they're an adherent, and it means that you adhere to the doctrines of that church. When you don't adhere to the doctrines of that church, and yet it's like saying that, I don't meditate, I don't believe in reincarnation. It's like reject everything about Buddhism and say I'm a Buddhist. I mean, really? At what point am I not a Buddhist? I'm a vegetarian, but I eat beef. It makes no sense.
I'm an atheist, but I believe in God.
Yeah. I believe it. It's like, I don't. I like what. What do they have to do before you say? I'm so divided between what you're teaching and what I believe that I'm not one of you anymore.
They stay in it for cultural reasons, I guess. It is a every single damn religion. One of them. Crazy Catholics.
And those numbers hand that papacy their impression of authority. So just so you know, when you keep calling yourself a Catholic, you empower these things.
Well, and I have to bring something else up since you mentioned the numbers, because one of the ways they get the numbers is if a kid is baptized in the Catholic Church, and christening a baby counts for the Catholics.
Right.
They add their name to the rolls. And the reason I have to bring this up is because we get email from time to time from new parents who, one or the other of the parents, their parents are Catholic. The new parents are atheists. So the grandparents are putting pressure on the parents to have a kid christened. And they write to us saying, hey, what do I do? And this happens frequently. And so I'll tell you a story about what happened with my family, because my wife's family is Catholic. She was raised Catholic. She got over that. So when we had our son, her family was putting pressure on her to have him christened. And so we actually looked into it. And as I told someone earlier this week on email, I naively thought that just meant they were going to, sprinkle some water on his head and, say some nonsense prayer in Latin or something, and no big deal. And then we read the fine print. And the first little hurdle was that they were not going to recognize me as his other parent because, of course, they got a problem with gays. So even though I was legally his other parent, they would not.
I mean, if this is too personal, then just, smack me and say you're moving on. But aren't you actually his parent?
Yes, I am. Yes, That's what I say. I'm legally his parent. I legally adopted him as a second
But I mean,
parent in Texas.
biologically, aren't you his parent?
No.
Oh, you're not. Okay, I misunderstood that. I thought I knew something about the story, but I don't. So
No,
carry on.
no, my wife is his biological mother.
Okay.
She gave birth to him and all. But I legally adopted him in
Okay,
Texas.
for some reason, I thought you had donated the egg and she had carried.
Oh, no.
Okay.
But even if I had, Texas doesn't recognize that.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I would still have had to adopt him. Yeah.
Which is nuts.
Yeah. So anyway, the second thing was, as part of the christening thing, you have to promise to raise the kid as Catholic. And when my wife heard that, she's like, "There's no way in hell a priest is ever getting his hand on my son." And so it was off. We just told her family, it's not going to happen. Get over it. And eventually they did. But the other thing is, if you have them christened, if you can get past all of that, and you have them christened, and you don't mind lying and telling them you're going to raise the kid Catholic when you're not,
right?
They will add his name to the rolls, and that kid will be considered Catholic. And even if the kid never darkens the door of a Catholic church ever again in his life, they still count him as Catholic. So, something to think about. Don't feed the beast here.
And if you were baptized, see about trying to get your name taken off the rolls. It can be very difficult and involve writing a lot of letters, but it can be done.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Or you could just, commit blasphemy or something and have yourself excommunicated.
Yeah, even still, I think they try to talk you out of that, getting excommunicated. Yeah. But yeah, try to get excommunicated. It'll be fun.
If I were Catholic, I'd try real hard to get excommunicated. I think I've probably already done stuff I could get excommunicated for.
Oh, definitely. There's video.
But yeah, definitely that organization. I mean, don't kid yourself that when they are talking about their influence or pushing their influence around the globe, that they are not claiming that they represent X number of individuals. And if your name is in there, you are lending yourself to whatever they're doing.
Yes.
Yep.
So, a few other things happened this past month. Virginia tried to probe women who were having abortions. They had a law mandating ultrasound before abortion, but they put it in there that it had to be transvaginal ultrasounds. So they were going further than any state before. Well, by mandating transvaginal, although I think Texas in practice has a transvaginal law. But this was for no medical reason. I mean, they do abortions before ultrasounds, but they don't necessarily have to do them transvaginally, and they also don't have to have waiting periods and don't have to have the woman listen to the heartbeat and all these other shaming rituals that they put around these ultrasounds. But yes, basically a woman could not get an abortion if she refused to be penetrated by this big old dildo is what it looks like, transvaginal probe. So yeah, state-sanctioned rape in Virginia.
Well, and then there are some people who are claiming that it's not rape because she's pregnant, so she already agreed to be penetrated.
Oh, yes. Who was that? That was a woman that actually said that.
That's bizarre.
I can't remember who it was. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could Google, but my computer's not here. There are a lot of people who are crying foul about saying rape, even a lot of pro-choice people. But, I mean, the legal definition is penetration of bodily orifice with an object or body part without consent. And it meets the definition. If the woman did not want to have the transvaginal ultrasound, but yes, she has to have it to have an abortion, that's coercion, because rape can be by force or coercion. I mean, if these people that want to say it's not rape, you have a problem with the definition of rape.
It really is amazing to me how analogous they make sex to a crime. When there is so much that when people who are, I guess, anti-sex are, I can't believe all the things that go with, she should have thought of that when she had sex. Literally, there are so many things that there are people willing to say, you consented to X, Y, Z, A, B, C through freaking 1 to a million when you had sex. And it's like they take that act and they want to strip you of your rights. They want to, strip you of rights that we won't strip a mass murderer of.
Right.
And it's because you had sex. Yeah. Literally, they will go back to that and say, well, she should have thought of that when she had sex. It's like, really? Did she, what crime did she, is that a crime? Did she commit a crime? Because you're stripping her of her freaking right to physical autonomy. We wouldn't strip, we put Ted Bundy to death and we didn't strip him of that. We put him to death and we wouldn't have forced him to donate a kidney.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, get real. I mean, we would not have forced the man to donate a pint of blood, but we would execute him. And her, we will violate in a way that we say Ted Bundy was protected.
Yeah, we wouldn't have, been shoving a probe up his ass for anything
because
either.
She had sex.
Well,
she had sex.
Not only that, but in any other situation, if you go into a doctor's office for a procedure and the doctor wants to perform some other procedure on you that's not medically necessary to what you came in for, if you tell him, no, I don't want that, and he does it anyway, he has assaulted you.
Sure.
Yeah,
sure.
You come in for a specific procedure. You don't come in and agree to whatever else somebody else thinks you should have that's not medically necessary to the thing you came in for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, or if he says, you have to do this other thing before I'll do this first procedure that you came in for, if it's not medically indicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. So symbolic. And a lot of people have been sharing the graphic that, actually shows this big probe going into the woman's vagina. And that's how intrusive the state is. All these small government people, I've said this before, they want to make government so small that they can shove it up your vagina and into your uterus.
Well, and I like the comment that somebody made. I can't remember who said this, but I thought it was great. And it was, if I wanted the government in my vagina, I'd fuck a senator.
Yeah. That's been on some protest signs that I've seen.
Yeah, but seriously, it's a lot like saying that when I get in my car to commute to work, I have consented to, being in a pile-up accident that kills 20 people.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I really didn't. I got in my car expecting to drive to work safely. I didn't consent to bleeding to death on the side of the road because I got in my car. I understand that there are risks involved in driving, but I certainly, that should not, accepting a risk is not the same as consenting to something.
Right.
I did not consent to die on my way to my office. And if I get hit by another vehicle, which I almost did, in fact, this morning, right? Somebody ran a red light while I was turning and they literally were crossing right in front of me and I had to slam on my brakes. I could have been hit. And if I end up bleeding on the side of the road and someone says to me, we're just going to leave you and let you bleed to death because, well, hell, you consented to bleed to death. That's what it means when you get in a car. What the hell is wrong with you? Nobody can be that stupid. I mean, to me, that has to be a disingenuous argument because no one can. There are certain times when people put me in a position where I have to determine whether they're lying or they could possibly be that stupid. And it happens more often than I wish it did. And I also have the dilemma sometimes of wondering if they're that stupid or if they're actually just simply insulting me by trying to pretend that I'm that stupid. And this is one of those cases where, when someone says to me, well, you got in a car, so if you end up bleeding on the side of the road, we're just going to leave you because you consented to bleed to death. That's what driving means. Okay, well, only an idiot would say that. And I can't believe that anybody is that level of idiot, so I think you're lying. And on a weird level, you should be flattered that I'm calling you a liar, because if I thought you were that stupid, it would be worse. Right? So be glad that I consider you a liar. And when it comes to the pregnancy thing, the idea that, well, she had sex, so she consented to like all this crazy shit that happens later. And it's like, well, no. I mean, we know that there's certain things you can do. There's a risk of getting in an accident and being injured when you're driving. But that's different than saying I'm consenting to bleed to death because I drove to work this morning.
What's the matter with your kitty?
I'm sorry. I'm trying to keep him quiet. There's no way to... But anyway, it's sort of the same thing. It's like saying, well, you got pregnant, so you consented to have a child because you had sex. Well, no, that I didn't consent to have a kid when I had sex any more than I consented to bleed to death when I, got in my car to drive 15 minutes to work today. It's not consenting. I know there's a risk that I could die, but I do expect that if I'm in an accident on the way to work, somebody will help me. That you will not leave me bleeding to death on the side of the road and say, well, that's what it means to drive. What the hell? Yeah.
Or that they give you treatment, that they'll shame you throughout the whole process and be like, well, okay, we're going to stop your bleeding, but first you have to, look at this picture of this ultrasound inside your body of, how you're bleeding.
First we're going to shove this thing up your butt, and then it's like, this is crazy. This is totally crazy. I mean, saying that risks exist and that we acknowledge that a risk exists is not the same as consenting to a thing. I don't know how anybody could possibly confuse those two things. I have a risk of getting in an accident on the way to work. It does not mean I consent to bleed to death because I want to drive to my office. That is really, really messed up. And no one's that stupid. And so people just need to stop using that argument because you cannot be that stupid. You just can't. I don't believe it. I am unable to accept that a person can be so stupid as to think that's reasonable.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Tracie. Speaking of people who believe things like that, I will go ahead and say that there is a group called Secular Pro-Life. They're on Facebook and such, and they are pro-life, anti-choice atheists. And they are happy to be going to the American Atheist Convention to have a booth, which, they need to be allowed to have a booth there. But Matt Dillahunty, my husband, who's on the Atheist Experience, I think pretty much everybody who listens should know of him, has thrown down the gauntlet and challenged Kelsey Hazard. I think she's the president. She may just be a prominent person in there, to a debate over abortion.
Good.
We have been in contact with her. She has some things and Matt has some things, so it might not be something that happens till well into the summer, but the challenge has been thrown because they are now atheists can be anti-choice or pro-life.
Yes.
All you have to do to be an atheist is not believe in God. No other positions. However, being anti-choice is an irrational position, as Tracie has just stated so wonderfully. So, yes, I really, really wish I could be at the AA convention. because I would be over at that booth like the whole damn time. And apparently they're going to have fetus models, which is just
awesome.
hilarious.
Like my keychain.
Huh?
Like my keychain.
Yes, like your keychain, but I think they're going to be like all to scale and everything. And the ones I've seen, they all look like white chocolate, so I just want to eat them up.
They look so sweet.
They do. They look awesome. Nom nom nom.
Like spoken like a real atheist.
Yes. Oh, me and Matt were at a restaurant last night, and they had baby cobbler.
Baby cobbler.
Yeah, right
Poor
there,
babies.
right there on the menu.
Wow.
Took a picture and everything.
That's like my husband talks about
Wow.
the children's museum. He's like, all those poor children.
So, yeah, that debate, you'll hear about it when it happens.
Good.
Yeah, I'm looking forward. He's gonna crush him. Crush. 'Cause
Yeah, I mean, I think I recently had like a medical thing that I went through, and I am no longer capable of autonomous living. I cannot live autonomously. My body will not support itself, and I do not have a right to life outside of this assisted living. And if that meant imposing on someone else's body, and they said they weren't willing, guess what? I would have to die. Period. I would have to die. I cannot force another person to lend me their body so that I can survive. Their capacity to say no to that, no matter how slight the quote inconvenience to them, is not so slight that my life overrides that automatically. It does not. And even if that person is my mother, she can turn me down. The moment my body will no longer sustain itself, I no longer have the right to impose on another person in order to sustain my own life.
damn straight. Well, there's a few other stories we can throw in. Pretty much the war on contraception just took up the last several weeks. I mean, it's been non-freaking stop. I mean, everybody can go to my Facebook and just see how many stories I've posted and all the ridiculous things that have been said. But there is a bright spot. Mariam Namazi and Aliyah Magda El Mahdi, I hope I'm pronouncing all that right, have produced a nude photo revolutionary calendar. I think Aliyah posted a nude photo of herself. She's from Egypt, and they went crazy because she showed herself and insulted Islam and all that bullshit. So many prominent atheist women have had nude photos taken in solidarity with this, not as like, oh my god, look at all our sexy bodies, but more as like, I'm a woman, this is what I look like, I have the right to do this, you don't have the right to tell me to cover up.
Are you throwing down the gauntlet right now? Is this a challenge?
No, these pictures have already been taken. This calendar's already been made. If I'd known about it, I probably would have been like, oh yeah, well, I'll pose naked for it. But
do you feel slighted that you weren't even invited?
Well, no, I mean, I'm not really famous or anything, but I totally would have done it, and it's an awesome thing. And you can buy these, and I'm not sure exactly what it goes to, but I'm sure proceeds go to benefit women's rights. What I just read, this is from Feringula.
Cool.
So that's one good thing.
Yeah, there's some famous people that are naked in that. So
yeah, Greta Christina and who else? I don't know, but lots of them. You can actually go preview it online.
Yeah, there's a lot of like bloggers and stuff in there. So
if you take your clothes off and get your picture taken, you have consented to have your family burn you to death in the street for an honor killing.
Yeah.
And you've consented to have sex with anyone who wants to.
That's right. To be gang raped by people to teach you a lesson.
Yeah, because you're just a dirty, dirty slut. And how dare you? And you'll never get a job.
And you take your clothes off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's also Mark Driscoll is a famous preacher at Mars Hill Church, and he's obsessed with sex. Like half his damn sermons are about it, apparently. But he says that you can convert your husband. How do you think you can convert your husband?
By not having sex with him anymore.
No.
By having lots of sex with him.
Not quite.
Okay.
Blowjobs. Blowjobs are the key to converting your husband. Oh, but he says it is. It's in the Bible. Song of Solomon has oral sex in it.
But that is not what a penis is meant to go into to make babies.
That's right. Just ask the Catholics.
That's unnatural.
According to Catholic doctrines.
It's like mascara or wearing clothes or cooking your food. It is that unnatural. If you're gonna have oral sex, you might as well cook your food, wear makeup, and just be gay.
Okay.
Because you've just gone out in that nature. Just whatever. You might as well be driving a car at that point. It's just disgusting.
But yeah, Mark Driscoll, sexist, just horrible, horrible all around person, but loves the blowjobs. Can't get enough of the blowjobs.
So funny.
It is kind of amazing that for some of these guys, the blowjobs never go away.
It's just funny to me that it's like, how do they, I don't care if it's in the Bible, when they use that natural argument, right? It's about, this is biologically what sex is supposed to be because this is how you procreate. That's their whole thing. That's why gay is so bad. It's like, you can't say gay is bad and then have a blowjob. How the hell does that work? That's completely antithesis. That's so hypocritical.
And you can't argue that gay sex is unnatural because, it doesn't lead to reproduction and then use birth control. Because if you're having non-procreative sex, it's kind of the same thing.
And Catholics
if you're going to argue from nature, if you're going to argue from natural, and don't get me wrong, because I think they're completely wrong that gay is unnatural. I think they don't understand what natural means. So please understand that I'm not agreeing with that. But I'm saying that if they're going to say man on top, get it over with quick, produce progeny, and that's natural, and that's it, that's the freaking prescription. The oral sex does not fit into that. Any more than gay. If you're going to condemn gay and you're having oral sex, welcome to hypocrisy.
Yeah. And the Catholics would actually, agree. They would say that, contraception leads to being gay because if sex is not for procreation, then anything goes.
Just might as well be screwing the couch cushions. It's just wild mayhem. Bottle up your butt. There's like no restrictions at that point.
Oh yeah.
It is they're completely. I don't know. You just don't know whether to laugh or it's like these are real people and this is their real thinking. You know what I'm saying?
I know.
I can't believe people think like this.
I want to ask them sometimes, what have you done to yourself? Why have you done this to yourself?
I look at how I used to think, though, and I'm just like, holy cow. Holy cow. How you can mess up a person's head. There's so many things that you don't even think. Because indoctrination, the biggest, the biggest, like one of the biggest tools, I suppose, or the biggest uses of indoctrination, one of the things that makes it so good at what it does, is that it gets you to not put certain things together. You don't ever think of 1 and 2 in the same frame. And the moment you do, suddenly something goes squirrely. And you're like, it's just like it doesn't process, and the computer just kind of locks up. And you're going, wait a minute, this isn't supposed to be in the same frame with that. Wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. And sometimes when that happens, a person that's indoctrinated will say, I just don't know what to make of it. It's one of those, it's God's mysterious. It's mysterious and I don't know. And then sometimes they get hit with it and they're just like, wait a minute. Okay, wait a minute, because that doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make sense. Don't fall back on it's mysterious and I'm not supposed to know. When you get two things together and they don't jive, that is a sign, that's a message to you from your brain telling you this is not adding up. And you really don't need to look away. You need to look at this. Look at this. Don't be afraid to look at this. And don't think you're too stupid to understand this. Turn off that tape that you've been rolling from the time you were little, that they've been telling you that you're too stupid and God's all this and you're just like an ant and God's like a human, and it's like you can't understand it, because you can. You know how geology works, and you know that if there was this worldwide flood, there would be evidence of it. Put those things together. And it's like the same thing here. There's certain things where it's just like, put these things together, put them together, and just have a look at it. And look at this. Look at it. Don't look away. Look at it. And they just don't look at these things.
And don't fall back on that. Just God did it. Just God did it either. Because when there's a passage in the Bible where I think Jacob is ask Laban, this is Jacob from Jacob and Esau, if he can have all these spotted sheep and goats that are born.
Right, the rods.
Yeah. So he has the sheep and goats, or whatever they are, look at spotted and speckled rods while they fuck. And then the offspring are born spotted and speckled. Now, when I read that as a little girl, I knew about genetics. I loved Punnett squares in school. I loved genetics. And I was like, but that's not how it is.
Yeah.
And I was just like, well, maybe God just intervened and made the baby sheep spotted and speckled anyway, just so that Jacob could prosper. And, eventually I got back to that. Like, I didn't let that answer satisfy me for very long. It always nagged at me. But, some people would just have let that go or not even recognized it. It just wouldn't have registered like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember thinking that it was really, really impressive that there were like ocean fossils on mountaintops. Clearly, Noah is true. Ignoring everything I'd ever learned about how mountains are formed. A continental drift and ground pushing up from other ground, mountain ranges on the coast, and, glaciers sliding. And it's like, okay, why didn't I put these things together? When they told me in church that there's fossils of ocean things up on the mountains, why did I say, yeah, flood? And totally not think of all the things I'd learned in school about how mountain ranges are formed. That's indoctrination. It's what it does. It stops you from asking and from putting these things together. You don't put the things together in a way that would normally make you say, but wait a minute. But wait a minute. But wait a minute never happens when you're indoctrinated.
Well, and it's almost like, you go to see a sci-fi movie or something, and, or, a Harry Potter movie or something like that, and weird shit happens, and you kind of suspend disbelief for a while.
Sure.
But the difference is you walk out of the movie theater and you're back to reality, and you know that none of that in there was real.
Right.
And the difference with church is that when you walk out, you're not back in reality. You think that that shit you saw in there was real, or that they told you that you would see was real.
Yeah. That's a great analogy,
around,
actually.
And you walk around convinced that something that if you saw it on a movie screen, you would not accept that as reality. But you walk around, you internalize that, and you think, yeah, this is reality. This is truth. And everybody else doesn't have the truth, but you do.
That's a really fantastic analogy on a lot of levels, and one that it brings to mind immediately. I was watching the latest Star Trek movie. I've seen it several times. And there's a scene where, like, the villain comes through a black hole and then he attacks a starship. And then, like, 25 years later, he has this run-in with more starships, right? And I sat there and I thought, what did he do for like 25 years after he attacked this initial starship? Like, didn't Starfleet send a bunch of ships out to find out what happened? And I mean, wouldn't they respond to that in some way? How did he hang out in this location waiting for this other ship to come through the black hole for 25 years and he wasn't ever found or investigated or nothing ever happened? Well, apparently, when I asked that question on my wall on Facebook, I got a bunch of people writing to say, oh, there's this website and it explains all the Star Trek stuff. And what happened was they had gone off and done this other thing and they calculated when they needed to be back and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, okay. And it was resolved. Right?
Yeah.
Now, when you just go by the movie, it doesn't make any sense. But when people tell you there's this website and it explains all this other crap about the story that they didn't put in the movie, and this is what happened, and you're just like, oh, I guess, okay. That's kind of like religion.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make sense. You look at it and it doesn't make any sense. And then when you go to somebody and you say, hey, preacher, this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And then he goes and pulls this old apologetic and it's like, well, and you get the story that fills in the gap. And then you go, they patch it all up and you go away appeased. That's all I needed was just that little bit of information. It doesn't matter if it's true or not true, or if it's really feasible or what. It just tell me whatever happened in those 25 years and he wasn't there, and make up whatever thing you want to make up. And that's all it takes to appease me, and I walk away and it's explained. And that's exactly how religion works. You throw anything at that hole to patch it, and that's all it takes, and it's patched. It doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to be true. It just has to be something that fills the hole.
And people are taught, all of us were taught this in church, is that questioning anything about religion, especially a central doctrine, is so uncomfortable. It's so taboo that once you get the apologetic, it's like, okay, now I've got the answer. I don't have to question this anymore.
Right.
And so you never even think, wait a minute, there's another hole here, because that apologetic doesn't make sense.
Right, but what you're saying is when you've got this fantasy story, that makes sense because they can make up whatever they want to make up.
Right.
When you're talking about religion, when you're asking me to walk out of that church into the real world and keep applying this, you got to do better than patch the hole.
Right.
It has to make sense in the real world. Fossils on a mountaintop prove Noah does not make sense when you know how mountain ranges form. You cannot reconcile those two things.
Yeah. And then when you find out a little bit about wooden ships and how they're built, the whole Noah thing makes even less sense.
Well, it's like Beth is saying, you patch that with it's a miracle. Well, God made it so. He made it so. And you don't ever really get into the whole idea of if God's just going to make it so, why even do a flood? Why not just kill everybody and leave Noah and his family and the animals? And what the hell's the point of a flood and a magic boat and this whole deal when all you're trying to do is just get rid of everybody? Just snap your fingers, be rid of everybody, and there's Noah and his family. Why do you have to? He's collecting all these animals. He's making this art. To what? Impress the people who are about to die? because
Yeah.
they're not going to be around to tell the story. Okay. So it does no good. It's like it's just as impressive to the, half a dozen people that are left if you snap your fingers, wipe everybody out, and they're the only ones left with all the animals and stuff. Plus, you don't have to slaughter a bunch of innocent animals and babies and, people who had nothing going on. It's like, it's just complete nuts when you start saying, well, this part was a miracle. What the heck?
Yeah.
The floating boat, he's going to make the floating boat work miraculously. Well, then why even do the flood? Why do the 40 days and the 40 nights and the dove goes out and the bird comes back? And it's like this whole damn thing is so you can have a magic boat. I mean, isn't the point you just wanted to wipe out all the evil people that you should have known were going to be evil when you made them? I don't know. But when you start looking at it, it's like the Matrix. It just starts unweaving. You see that it's not like a Matrix. It's like a dream. It's like one of those dreams you have where you start to realize it's not making sense. And the more you start considering it, and you're going, wait a minute, I can't fly. I can't fly. What's going on here? How am I flying? This is crazy. And then you wake up. You wake up and then you're in reality. And that's kind of like what deconversion is. You wake up one day and you say, holy cow, the whole thing was a mind screw that I was subjected to as a child. And they really, really did a number on my brain and made me think that fantasy was reality. And wow, I can't believe that. And it's hard to believe that someone can do that to your brain.
Yep.
I'm sorry that I spent so much.
You're on fire tonight, Tracie.
Well,
awesome.
But I'm hijacking you from feminist issues.
No, that's perfectly fine. This is Feminist Atheist. In fact, we will do a straight up atheist story right now.
Okay.
So American Atheist has been putting up a lot of billboards lately. And guess what? There's been opposition.
No.
Yes. So they had a billboard about slavery. It had a picture of an African American man in a collar, chains, and it said slaves obey your masters, and had the verse from the Bible. This was put up in Pennsylvania, I think, because they are celebrating the year of the Bible by legislative decree.
Good.
And then it had the American Atheist website and everything on it. Well, guess what happened to it?
They were happy because it was a nice Bible verse and they were promoting God's word, right?
No, it was vandalized the very first night.
Oh, what a shock.
That's excellent.
Yeah, really. I mean, it gets lots of publicity. Tons of it.
Was it atheists that vandalized it because they hate the Bible and the Bible verses?
I don't think so. Now, we don't have any information on the vandals, which I actually put up a status. I mean, has anyone ever had charges pressed against them, much less been prosecuted for vandalizing an atheist sign? Have they ever found anyone? Because, I mean, there's been dozens vandalized, and I've never heard of a single arrest.
Yeah, if I don't think I've ever heard of anyone being even charged.
Well, has anybody been found? I mean, I don't know if they've even located people. Vandalism's a little bit of it's like a cowardly thing. You do it undercover and you don't get caught. And I mean, you're in a city of a bunch of people and you're pretty faceless. And vandalism is extremely, extremely cowardly. This is someone else's property. Someone else paid for this. And you just come in and you destroy what someone else paid for. And it is not your right to do that.
Right. So, yeah, it is hard to locate and prosecute people for, but I don't know. You just think if the cops were taking it seriously, somebody somewhere would have gotten in trouble for it. So, I don't know, but yes. So they had one vandalized. They also have been putting them up. They have two, one in Arabic and one in Hebrew.
Wow.
To go up that say, I think, it's a myth. It's probably not that, but something about, it's not true and it's your choice, presumably to leave. And
yes,
one in
something about God is not real or something.
something.
They use the word God in at least the one that was written in Hebrew.
Yes, and that was to go up in a Hasidic neighborhood in New York. Well, the landlord refused to let it go up, and it had to move. It's still kind of close, but not right where they wanted it to be for maximum impact. As far as I know, the Arabic one is still either up or scheduled to go up.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's actually, I think it's up already.
That's impressive.
And actually, the guys in the Muslim community were saying, yeah, it's no big deal. This might spark a dialogue.
Oh,
So
really? I hadn't seen that.
Yeah, they were fine with it. And it was actually the rabbis in the Hasidic community that were having a shit fit over the fact that the billboard spelled out the word God.
Oh, yes. You have to do G/D.
I know. They put the O in the middle,
Goodness gracious. God was spelled. And the sun also rises.
Yes.
And yeah, they were saying something about the atheists are a bunch of crazies that have nothing in their life or something. I think sluts. One rabbi said that.
Well, can I just say, like, Jen and I have this thing about boundaries. And it galls me when a person does not respect a boundary, or because usually it means they don't understand the boundary. And when it comes to something like a billboard, if you don't like the billboard, what you do is you get your own billboard and you put your that other billboard message. And if you don't have the intellect, I guess, to come up with something that can counter the other billboard, your frustration should not be taken out on destroying what someone else paid to produce. The proper venue is another billboard. And say what it is you have to say. Don't just go and destroy someone else's property, because that is violating a boundary. You respond within the venue that is appropriate, and in this case, it's another billboard, right? It's just like a letter to the editor. When someone writes a letter to the editor, and you read it and you don't like it, you know what you do? You write your own letter to the editor. If you're not eloquent enough to respond, I'm sorry, but you're shit out of luck, because that's your option. And if you can't respond to it, then admit that they've written something that you don't know how to respond to, and respect that. And if you want to respond, that's it. You just have to write a letter to the editor. What you don't do is call the person's house and threaten them. All right? You don't look them up personally and get into some weird personal. You don't get crazy with the boundaries. You stay in the venue where this is happening, and you battle it out in that venue, because that's where it's happening. You keep it there. And I really have just no respect for people who cannot recognize a boundary. I don't know how else to say it. If you don't know, if somebody's posting something and you're posting to them and you start taking it off there onto something else and you go personal, or you take it to their work, or you are completely out of line, And vandalism like this, when you're unhappy with a message, vandalism is completely out of line. You are absolutely 100% wrong across the board in every conceivable way. You take out another billboard and you put out your opposing message. that's your option. Or you write a letter to the editor, or you hand out flyers, whatever you want to do. That's your option. Your option is not to illegally destroy someone else's property that is not yours, that they have legally purchased and paid for.
All right. And the proper venue for airing your disagreements with the Godless Bitches is bitches@atheist-community.org. Just in case anybody wants to do that.
Absolutely. Do not write to me personally on my Facebook wall. Don't come and message me personally. If it's about GB, you use the venue that Beth just graciously provided to you for Godless Bitches. That's what it's for.
We also have a Facebook page, and you're welcome to vent on the Facebook page as well.
Yes. We will be recording this and putting it up there, and comments can go on that thread.
And if you do email us and you have comments or a gripe or something about a specific episode, please reference that episode, because if you call or write to me and tell me I'm a total bitch and everything I said was ridiculous and stupid, I have no idea what you're talking about unless you tell me when I said that. So please tell me what episode.
Yes. Nobody's quite said that yet, which is good.
But yeah, some context is always helpful, because just, keep in mind, it's like, this is the one thing I will say. It's like, when you talk on a program like this, wow, it's just crazy, because you're talking off the top of your head, and somebody comes back to you like 3 months after you said one thing in a 3-hour conversation, and it's just like, I don't agree. And you're like, what the hell are you talking about? You've got to provide some context. I mean, just try to try to keep in mind that you just listened to this thing and that one segment stood out to you, but it may be something I don't even remember saying, or maybe I totally misspoke and I'm just like, wow, did I really even say that? This isn't scripted. I don't know. I don't have a complete snapshot memory of every word I've ever said. So you're going to have to help us out sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, we're happy to be corrected if we said something, factually wrong. Like, we didn't even remember the name of the woman who said that about transvaginal ultrasounds or whatever. Cause we don't prepare for y'all. Y'all are just not that important.
Oh no, that's not what we mean at all.
Oh no! Now y'all are gonna email me about that. But yeah, we do this out of the goodness of our hearts. Just on our own time.
Our little cold atheist hearts.
Yes. So yeah, email us. We're glad to have email. I don't even know what we were talking about. We're like off now.
Hasidic billboard.
Hasidic billboards, yes. So yeah, they've got those billboards up, not in the places they wanted them, but they're up. So nobody can say that we're not targeting, Muslims and Jews, that it's all Christians all the time, because it's not.
And apparently if you quote the wrong Bible passage, you will get vandalized.
Well, you'll get vandalized if anything. Justin Vacula is trying to get a billboard up that just says atheists and then has like whatever atheist group is in that area. I forget what area it's in. And it was actually rejected by the company. I think his was a bus ad. And it was rejected. All it said was atheists. Because that's
actually kind of funny.
Oh,
I mean, I like that. I like that idea. That's really clever.
Oh, it was a great idea. The idea was to have the least offensive billboard possible, just to prove that people would still bitch about it. And they did.
It's so subtle,
That's really great.
I mean, I've been saying that.
Like that.
I'd been saying that for quite a while, so...
Like, you just want to get a billboard that says racists, communists. Like, what would they allow? What wouldn't they? Like, no, it's not like an obscene word or anything. It's just, what does that even mean to just have that word? It doesn't even implicate it in any way. Like, atheists suck. Atheists are great. It's just atheists. I love
Yeah,
that.
I bet we would have no hope of getting a billboard or a bus ad that just said "Godless Bitches."
Oh no, no, no,
If it
no.
said just that, people would Google it and they'd find us.
Yeah, they would. But oh well.
Yeah, no hope of it.
No. So, does anybody have any other stories, anything we've missed over this past month? I know we can't hit everything. This was such a crazy month for feminist issues.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, there's
Go ahead.
there's a viral video that's trending right now. That's about Joseph Kony. He's from Uganda, and he's the head of the Lord's Resistance Army. And this is the group that kidnaps children, turns them into child soldiers. The boys, anyway. The girls are turned into wives / rape victims for the soldiers. And one of the things he does is he forces the kids to kill their parents. So they're orphans, and they basically have no choice. So he's a horrible guy. So there's a video trending right now called Kony 2012. The aim of this is to make him famous so that they can catch him. And so a lot of people are jumping on this. What I'm about to tell you is sort of like a caution about this. If you spend money on this, that money's going to go to the Ugandan army. And one of the things that the Ugandan army does is they rape and loot. So, are they worse than Joseph Kony? No. He's probably the worst of the worst. But, before you give money to support this, just think about what you're doing and do some research.
What's the name of the group again?
The video is called Kony 2012, Kony 2012.
Wow.
And so anyway,
where can people go to find more information on the Ugandan army and their crimes?
There's actually, I don't think I have it up right now. Actually, no, I do. Hang on just a second. I'll give you, there's a guy that's written a blog on this. If you Google visible children, it's on Tumblr. So visibleChildren.tumblr.com. He's got some facts up, and his original blog post where he provides some links and give you more information about Kony 2012. So all I'm saying is I'm not telling people don't support it or don't publicize it, because certainly we need to catch this guy. I'm just saying you need to research this group and decide if you're okay with how the money's being spent for this group. And if you make a conscious decision, then fine, go ahead, do what your conscience dictates. But don't let an emotional plea, because there's like a 30-minute video that's associated with this, and it's very well produced, and it's a heart-tugging video. And don't let emotion get the best of you here. So make a rational decision about what you're going to do.
Okay. Well, I had not heard of that. I had no idea about it. I'll have to look that up and see what's going on.
Yeah, it's certainly something important.
Oh, Jen, you're breaking up. Yeah, we're having some Skype stuff. Well, if we don't have anything else, we've had a pretty long show for the fans, so they can get their fix. Be sure to visit our Facebook page and email us at bitches@atheist-community.org. And this is Beth Presswood signing out. Goodbye. Tracie?
Bye.
And Jen.
And bye, everybody.
All right. Thanks.